can we have a poll questions just to break some ice, right? Because the topic for today is all about the tech, the digital, right? So there are two simple questions here. We'd like to gather your feedbacks, right? One is really amongst all the alternative of the new way of investing, right? Where are you personally investing it today, right? I think there are few digital strategy that SC is pushing forward, right? P2P, crowdfunding, robot advisor, or the more formal SC word will be digital investment management, right? DIM, right? Digital currency and token, or none of the above, right? So we are still staying at the traditional medium and channel. Right, and the second questions would then be, which of the following that you see to be gaining the greatest momentum in the future, right? So first questions is, where are you investing today, right? Second questions would then be, which are the trends that you see that would shape and reshape the industry a little bit, right? And thanks for those who have answered questions. I think we start to see a lot coming in already. Wei Min, just to be sure, can you see the result yourself?
No, I was prompted the questions. I answered the question myself too, but I did not see the final poll.
Right.
We'll be keen to see what people understand.
Yeah, especially in a way, chartered financial analysts, right?
Yeah. What would you guys do? You guys more conservative, or you guys never delve into the alternative finance space?
Interesting, right? So question number one, I think we're about 90% people voted. If I could share the outcome of the survey, right? Question number one is, where are you investing it today? Half, 58%, none of the above, right? So 58% of CFA chartered holders and members are not investing in any of the above forum. The highest is P2P, 21%. Crowdfunding is about 13%. Robot advisor is 23%. Right? I think amongst all, I think robot advisor will be ranked number one, followed by P2P. I think crowdfunding and digital currency are having a tie here, right? 13% each. All right. So let's quickly move on to the next questions, right? So where do you see is the one that gaining the strongest momentum? Robot advisor and digital currency are having a tie here, right? 37% of you think the robot advisor will be one of the trend that we can't ignore. Another 37% of you feel that digital currency, are something that's very important, right? So a combined basis is about 74% voted for either robot advisor or digital currency. Okay, hope that will give you some flavor, Wei Min, as to contextualize some of the thoughts here, right? Maybe we can move on. Right, I think let's dive into the key digital trend, Wei Min, right? So I personally pulled this out from Securities Commission's annual report 2019, right? I must really say, I think congratulations to you and the team in Securities Commissions. Kudos to some of the hard work that we have done, right? Personally, I feel the momentum, right, when I go through the annual report, right? So I think across the different platform and licenses, you were able to see there are significant improvement and momentum gain, right? So for equity crowdfunding, I think we added 3 more operators, right? So we got into 10. I mean, the result would change, right? And we mean, you can share your perspective, right? Because we are about 10 months into the financial year already, right? So we probably have approved some of the new operators and players. P2P, we added about 5 to about 11. Digital exchanges, right? Where about 37 of us feel that it's going to change. There are 3 of them, right? I think there are three names that we can't ignore, right? The Luno, the Synergy, the Tokenize, etc. Property crowdfunding will be very is very interesting to me, because it's a new types of players that we added for last year, right? And DIM, right? Robot advisor trend, there are about 7 of them. Digital broker, 1 of them. So in total, if you're talking about the alternative, you know, and digital player, we have about 33 of them already, right? And once again, could also you, Wei Min, and the team in Securities Commissions, maybe you can take us through, if you have a quick reflections on the past, right? What are the few areas that you feel that we are doing well, and where are the few areas that you would like to see more improvement, right? From the Malaysia capital market perspective.
Sure, we'll cover that later.
Okay, so maybe I can pass the floor to Wei Min. Could you share a slide?
Okay, if whoever sharing can unshare, then I'll try to share mine. I assume, let me see,
yep.
Can you see the screen?
We can see your slide now, yep.
Okay,
if you can project it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so thanks again to Justin and team, and but this is, I guess, my first rodeo to the CFA Society. So thank you for inviting me, and very honored to be here to share some of our experiences. Let me just cover that. So a couple of quick point I'll make, and I'll try to as candid and as open as I can with you, and happy to share and take any questions. So firstly, maybe I'll make a couple of quick remarks. So from the Securities Commission perspective, when we talk about digital, it's not about the technology. We have never looked at it from a technology standpoint, although I know earlier on we did talk about emerging tech and all, but fundamentally, when we look at digital, we're looking at what are the different business model or market model that will change. So you look at some of the work we did the last 4 or 5 years now, it's about whole crowdfunding. So it's about how the market changes. So we are actually adopting a different market structure, different business model, a different way to go to market, specifically looking to help the investor as well as issuer. So basically, how do we melt and how do we make people who need the money versus people who want to invest at the same time looking for return? So that's kind of where we come from, and I'll cover more how we get to that. The other point I would make is, although my title there have the word innovation, so we don't think innovations are done specifically and needing to be by an individual or department or by one particular group. It should happen pervasively across not just SC, but within the industry. And then we see that happening quite quickly. And I'll cover that more if anybody wants to take some questions. So let me just maybe quickly dive deep into what we have done so far. And then again, maybe go down the memory lane as far as we are concerned. And maybe I'll take some questions from then on. So I think our journey on digital, dating back to 2014, 2015, as some of you may appreciate, doing whole crowdfunding itself, especially for private company, is not as simple. We need to lay the legislative as well as the regulatory foundation. A simple example will be that fundraising or public solicitation of fund on private company itself has a broad implication. So these work are dating back earlier, where we need to amend the Companies Act. We subsequently need to amend our securities law as well. So, and that is actually what we consider a cross-agency, national level initiative, and that actually need to go to Parliament and make some changes. And that happened dating back a couple of years before we embark even on the journey. So we do need to lay some of those foundations that to some extent, we were bearing the fruits of the labor of our earlier year effort. And so that itself, as you can imagine, may be a bit complicated. So when we started this journey back in 2015, 2016, we set out to do 4 objectives. The 4 objectives are A is the first one is access to financing. So when we started to do digital, when we talk about different market structure, different business model, we were looking at how do we what the problem we're trying to solve. So number one problem was looking at the micro and SME segment, and today they are rather underserved or unserved by the financial industry broadly. So one of the key points to solve at that point, that's within the realm of our influence, are the access to financing. So one of our number one objective then was to actually enhance the ability to allow these issuers access to financing. This is kind of where we started putting out the guidelines, and prior to that we have a consultation paper. We put out our guideline on equity crowdfunding. So basically allowing crowdsourcing these funds from the investor to help these issuers back in 2015. So we put out the regulation for that, and then subsequently we actually registered 6 operators back then. In 2016, then we put out regulation for peer-to-peer financing. That is what we consider debt-based crowdfunding. So maybe some words to note: there are essentially 4 types of crowdfunding, broadly speaking, in categorically. What we, from a SC perspective, will only regulate 2 out of the 4 types. The other 2 types are donation or rewards-based crowdfunding. So these crowdfunding that we generally don't come to the realm because it doesn't really, I mean, the industry should have ability to do it. If they're driving the donation-based crowdfunding, that's not something that SC want to be. So essentially, what we are looking at was, if let's say an entrepreneur startup, they have a great idea, they don't have all the financial resources to start up his businesses. Again, they haven't really generated revenue and haven't really get off the ground. So he or she can actually go fundraise through a crowdfunding method. So in this case, what is exchanged for cash was the control of his company. So in this case, an equity of his or her company, right? And subsequently, if this entrepreneur gets certain successes, they are generating some revenue. And as I know, most of the entrepreneurs who would not give away their control of the company, then they can begin to what we call peer-to-peer financing. That is a debt-based crowdfunding, right? So then they need to immediately repay whatever they have crowdsourced or crowdfund from the investors, right? So that's kind of where we do what we consider a market-based financing for both exchange for equity or debt, in this case, peer-to-peer financing, right? So that actually help us generate great interest and helping there, and we were quite pleasantly surprised that we actually surpassed fundraise more than R1 billion just in September. So we were quite happy that we were able to do that, helping more than 2,500 micro and SMEs. And later on I will share some snippets. As you can imagine, that is actually helping many of these entrepreneurs how to access to financing, and that's something that it's a very, very well done. Just to give you a bit of a snippet, right? I think again, the micro and SMEs, they generally doesn't really need a lot of financing. Give you a quantum for peer-to-peer. The average size is just under 100,000 ringgit, and as you can imagine, how many 100,000 ringgit gets you to R1 billion, right? So there is a lot of the financing help that we can actually help this underserved segment. The average size for the equity crowdfunding is also no larger, is in million plus range. And we're quite happy that we now today have more than 110 companies today use this method to crowdfund. And in fact, the whole MCO period has been a blessing in disguise for us. We have first 6 months of this year, during thick of the MCO, we have crowdfunded more than what we have crowdfunded in 2019 alone. I think we are looking at by we close end of this year, we'll fundraise more than twice the amount we fundraised last year. So that's a great momentum. Now it does certainly helps that some of the stats I've seen, I guess with the whole movement control. A lot of people who traditionally travels and more dining out, less money to spend on luxury goods, they are actually channeling many of these investors into our space. We specifically see even in Q2, more than just a quarter alone, more than 1,800 Asian investors registered in that quarter. So we were seeing some emerging trends of the interesting behavior there. So that's kind of where we are now. Some of you may remember, as part of access to financing, we are also looking at that other ways to fundraise, right? So in this case, we're beginning to recognize the need for a token-based crowdfunding. So and what we have done in January 2019, we made a legislative change enabling or including the tokens to be part of the securities. So in this case, they bring into the realm of what we did for crowdfunding. So in this case, the fundraising activity could also happen by using digital asset or digital tokens. And that's a prescription order went through in January. And some of you may remember by June last year, we would have 3 digital asset exchange registered by them. And earlier this year, we also published the guidelines on the digital assets, so that enable us to fundraise through what we call IEO, initial exchange offering. So you can fundraise through by issuance of the tokens. This has just recently come into force. We published a guidelines for the industry to be familiar and big comments and critique. We just made into force in October 31st when we have do that. And part of the guidelines, some of you, if you have got a chance to read our press release and read our guidelines, we have also bring into fold the digital asset custodian. So this is where we beginning to look at, when after you issue the tokens, how do you actually hold that token? So this is a bit like the crypto wallets of the world, and it will be quite interesting. So that's something we have done to provide and facilitate the access to financing for this space. So then that's kind of where we are. And we also, I think, introduce a secondary market framework to enable people who has the fundraise through ECF or P2P, and enabling them to realize or monetize some of the gains, or some of the times that if they wanted to have their cash or their investment back prematurely, and then so long as you can find a secondary market or somebody else who can buy from you, then you can actually have that. And that has also gaining some momentum in that space. So that's objective number 1, when we set out to do. The second good objective when we set out to do was to actually talk about investor participation, right? So there are 2 parts, right? So there's an issuer, and then there is the investor. This is where I think, having gone through many of the homework, when we look at the robo-advisory domain, there is actually very broad-based. You can actually provide advice just by giving, through risk appetite, and all the way to manage somebody else's money. So within our digital investment management guidelines, which we published in 2017, when we invite application, there I think we are looking at allowing the investor have a better alternative way to invest. So this is where we have actually defined it to be an automated discretionary portfolio management services. I know that the whole robo-advisory framework are pretty broad-based. So I guess for the current phase of our thinking, the whole digital investment managers are doing what we consider the automated discretionary portfolio management services. And it has gained great traction. We have, I think, for a short span of 2 years plus, I think we have AUM about 300 million ringgit. So that is something, in fact, I think for this year alone, we have signed up about 90,000 investors. Obviously, to our pleasant surprise, there are, the whole MCO period has actually gained quite a fair bit of momentum, and that shows a good thing. Embedded within the framework, we're also thinking of spare change investment. So some of you may have seen the introduction of RISE, which is a bit very similar concept to Acorns in the US, where we actually encourage and enable our people to invest. So in this case, you can invest as low as 10 ringgit, 5 ringgit, and it's what we consider spare change, and subsequently allow you to actually save for the long term. So that's part of our inclusion agenda. In the same year, 2017, we also licensed Rakuten Trade, and some of you would have heard them. I think they have gained a lot of momentum this year, and that's a digital-only broker. And I think in the coming months, you will see more of these activity that we are actually also looking at. In 2020, this year, we have also introduced what we call Esp Framework. So this is in recognition of how the distributions of our capital market products. We also recognize a lot of times, a lot of the e-commerce as well as the e-wallet providers today can also be an effective distribution channel for us. This is where we come up with a fairly light touch approach. And that's where I think we came out with the ESP, or e-services platform framework. And this is to allow people which today are regulated digital wallet provider, allowing them to have ability to provide that bridge across to allow our investor to actually buy into different capital market products. You will see more of them because we are in the midst of licensing them and or registration them, and there are quite a number of traction in the market. I mean, on the screen here you can see DEX. We definitely gained momentum. I think in last month, I think we have traded more than 100 million in the last month for the digital asset. Obviously, the whole Bitcoin and other price rise up helps, and that's, we can talk more about that. So we do see a fair bit of traction in the crypto space on that. Let me cover the other two objectives, and then we can take some questions on there, and I'll share with you some of the statistics. The third objective when we set out to do was about the whole institutional market. So this one specifically, we're looking at the bond and sukuk market. Many of you would know that Malaysia is one of the largest bond market in the region, and number 3 relative to our GDP. So from that standpoint, we're looking at how could we actually provide this, and most of the institutional investors, especially foreign one, actually really like our fixed income instruments. So we thought that we should also propagate that within our local space. This is where in 2017 we introduced what we call BIX. This is a one-stop website where you can actually access to anything and everything you need to know about ringgit-based bond or sukuk, right? So and typically the whole this particular space suffer from a number of there are a lot of information about specific bond pre-issuance, right? So typically you can go to our website, and all places we can see all the filing document. But it normally post-issuance, you find less information, right? We normally suffer from, yes, I want to get into seasoning bond, or we actually go and get into the certain buy into certain bonds. But if you are not existing bondholder, you go to the trustee, they'll tell you you're not a bondholder. I may not be able to share with you so freely, although those are public information. Likewise, you normally don't have direct access, and sometimes very difficult to find the different information about these specific issuers, their financial information. Are they doing well? Has there any rating changes and all? Many of these information today, if you talk to the big investment bank, not just locally, internationally as well, they have a big trading desk who actually gather these information, and they're obviously more advantageous compared with smaller people. Even a retail can't have these information. So when we set out to do in 2017 was to say, if they can access this information, why don't we put all this information together, right? So post-issuance, the trading prices, historically, what are the upcoming bond issuances, or whether, historical rating trend patterns, and all put into one place. And that's kind of where we set out to do. And this is where the BIX was launched, and today it cover, you can go to the website, you say, what sort of yield or what tenure, and what are the, rating changes is there. Then you can actually select, then it will show you anything and everything you need to know about ringgit-based bonds and sukuk, right? So that's kind of our contribution to go into that space. In fact, today I'm actually wearing the BIX t-shirt. I just realized. So we're happy to to talk more about that. The last, but certainly not the least, is on the ecosystem. Right, when we started the journey, we actually didn't realize how difficult our supporting ecosystem. A simple thing, for example, on payment or settlement infrastructure. The simple thing like custodian or trustee, because part of our guidelines, they wonder because we may set out to do this could be a nascent new industry, how difficult that is for people to trust it, right? So if you can't trust it, then you say, how could we enable that trust through a third-party credible financial institution, which in turn hold your money or your script and or your tokens as an independent party. So this is where I think we were spending a lot of time augmenting the whole ecosystem, right? Whether it's a trustee side, whether it's a payment infrastructure settlement, whether it's on the rating and all different parts. So take a great deal of effort to do that. So as part of the effort, we created what we call Affinity Program. This launched in 2015. Late 2015. So this is our fintech outreach program where we have multiple, in fact, within the Affinity, we do have a number of focus groups. Some of you may be invited that, for example, when we put out the whole blockchain thinking, so we have a subgroup within there, and then we have the crypto one and all the other parts. I think that is something we have done much more. Now, within that, which I'll share if we have time later on, we also look at not just looking at the whole new industry. When we say we want to do digitization, we're also looking at the whole broader industry. So in this case, the brokerage industry, the fund management industry, and others. This is where we created Bridge. So this is Broker Industry Digitization Group. Again, time permits, I can share a bit more. I think we're looking at, for brokerage industry, we landed with 3 major focus area that we will be focusing on. So no surprise to everybody there. So one is on the KYC onboarding, right? So this talk about non-face-to-face, how do we enabling, a lot of time, you have the urge to want to trade certain product in Bursa Malaysia. Chances are, well, today no more, I think, because we're done bridge activity. But before this, right, it's normally T+3. You want to buy, then you open an account, you got a CDS account. By then you want to put your money in. Whether the opportunity is already gone past or your urge to trade is actually no more, right? So we want to do, if I same day want to open an account, I should be able to open an account, I should be able to trade. So that's kind of where we did that. The second part is the whole post-trade area, which is settlement, right? So today, if you look at, you go Maybank to you and all, 30,000 ringgit transfer, right? So you buy some of the stock, then how do you enabling the whole payment infrastructure that comes together with it? And we have working closely with Bank Negara and as well as the different banks, we were able to come up with a very elegant solution for that. The last area is in the corporate action. This is by far the least digitized domain area that we were. So they were talking about a simple thing like, you guys would have seen some of our good work like EAGM, right? So in order to do your annual report, your final earnings and all, you need to have an AGM, right? During MCO, we were rushed through the whole EAGM guideline. Is actually irony that we've been talking about that since last year, no take up from the industry, and then MCO came. We were able to facilitate the whole, I think there are more than 140 virtual or EAGMs happened during the whole MCO period. So and that's happened. So the general offers, so some of the corporate actions, the whole DRP, the dividend reinvestment plan, we were able to work with LSGN and to facilitate some part of this. So I think that's an area which is bizarre, as may seem extremely manual. We were able to gradually make that work. Likewise, we were able to do similar activity. We started the FMDG this year, and the financial is actually for fund management digitization group. Hold on, somebody else's phone is ringing. Okay, sorry about that. So for fund management, I think we also have 2 areas that we will really look at. One is the KYC. So the whole onboarding process for fund management is obviously a key topic. Some of the lessons learned from Bridge will actually help. The second area is actually in the whole post value chain part of it, and we'll see some part of that. And this is ongoing activity that we have done. The last one mentioned on the screen here is on the digital asset custodian. As part of the earlier effort that we want to create the whole custodian, because I think one of the things we want to look at, not just the tokens that issued and used globally, but as well as some of the tokens that we issued soon and later on. So we want to look at the whole custodian space, then we have enabled that. Two more points on the add, and then maybe I take a pause before we share. I share the infographic, then I take a checkpoint. So among all these digitization effort, one of the main thing that we have done is also on the cyber, right? So when you go digital and you go technology, so one of the things is so in tandem with that, so we issue our cyber risk guidelines in 2016. And that is gone through 1 year consultation. Many of you may have participated in the whole consultations and accumulating everybody effort. So we went on a multi-year journey to strengthen our capability. And if you guys are working closely with the banks, you will hear them complain that we do cyber drill every year now. So this is the 3rd year we're doing cyber drill. I would personally say that we don't fare as well as what we have hoped yet. So ongoing efforts. So this is where we created a cloud-based environment, simulate. One of the things that we wanted to do is actually to test our key industry players, their ability to respond and recover, right? So I think we're working very closely with NACSA or MKN to create the environment. We do that once a year, and we do that. The last but not least, I think, is on the blockchain project. Some of you may have seen our papers on Project Castor. So we created just to show, just a shine kind of beacon to the industry, where we prove to the industry that blockchain can work, and we created a prototype that actually value chain end to end, and we use that prototype for the unlisted and OTC markets. So we put our source code, we put the whole blueprint, and we put the whole thinking on the microsite. If you Google or you can search our website, you should be able to find. So this is to help doing our bit to help the industry. You want to embark on blockchain journey, here are the sample source code you can download, and you can actually code from there. And we have a technology blueprint to go with it. So just with that, let me just quickly cover some of the key achievement. I think that's mentioned by Justin earlier, but just to cover the ground, maybe a bit of more stats beyond the infographics here I will share. So interesting to note is the average fundraise or the investors, a large portion of our investors, more than 60%, are actually age 35 and below, right? So we're beginning to see an interesting trend, and especially in ECF, what we call emotive investment, right? A lot of times, a lot of the issuers actually have their customers who has actually be the ambassador or the people who actually wanted to invest in that particular issuers. Some quick point to note here is more than 65% of all the issuers are in the tech business, and more than 50% have women and youth investors. So I think that's something that we will definitely fulfill the other part of agenda, which is being inclusive and be able to help a lot of the budding entrepreneur to start up. 12,000 campaigns. So that means we have raised, I think we completed more than 12,000 deals in the short space of last 3 years or so. We have today 7 digital investment managers, which have covered more than 300 million as an AUM. We have more than 120,000 investors so far already. And this is definitely driving a lot of new momentums on next maybe there. So maybe I'll take a pause and take some questions, unless some people have. I actually did a slide on the industry one, but that one is super boring, so I'll leave that. So with that, maybe I'll pass back to Justin.
Hey, Wei Min, thanks a lot. I think such a comprehensive sharing, right? We got a question coming from Eric from a chat, right? How would custody be regulated? DEX currently engaged in an exam format in the sandbox?
No, so we don't have a sandbox approach. Maybe just to put it out there, I'm sure I'll get into trouble by saying. So generally, our approach is a bit slightly different. We are the way I am thinking about it is, if the industry have a strong needs and there is industry needs for certain things, we encourage people go to Affinity Program to come to us and say, these are the area where prevent us from achieving the goals. So the digital asset exchanges are fully registered. So it's not a sandbox. That means there's like no tomorrow, you come kind of a sandbox. So they are there. The trustees are today registered and regulated by SC. So this is talking about the, the TMF, the Malaysian trustee, the Maybank trustees of the world. There are two parts of it. I do recognize the digital asset custodian will cover the non-DEX related custodians, right? So they are the institutional grade, and they are the one we're looking at people who provide the whole digital asset wallet out there, which you can do. So this is talking about the whole requirements on the cold wallet and hot wallet and warm wallet if you want. Talking about how do you manage that. We are mandating it to ensure. So A is AMLA rules. So in this case, any tokens that come from outside to come into our ecosystem, they need to verify that, for example, you based on AMLA rules, that the token has not gone through some terrorist network, or the tokens. I mean, if you want, you can trace back the Genesis block. But I think that's kind of where we are imposing the rules. So some of the providers out there use like BitGo, which is pretty strong, and some of the other providers. So I think the trustee or the custodians, again, it must be the one that registered with SC as well.
Right. Thanks for that. And Wei Min, you mentioned about hot wallet, warm wallet, and cold wallet. Can you give us a bit more explanation?
Okay, wasn't expecting to a discussion in this way. Okay, so if you guys are not bored with the details, so if you just look at markets like since you just mentioned, like for example, Luno, Synergy, or
Correct.
tokenized side. So the exchanges today, think about it. Whenever they want to buy, sell, and trade, typically and as many of you would know that the digital asset token, one of the most susceptible point with regards to some of the cyber hacking incident actually attack the wallet where the vault or where the money is. So typically within the trading space, the wallet or the position changing hands are what we call a hot wallet. There's where actually you store them and you use them on that day's basis. On the cold wallet is where, for layman purposes, it's disconnected from internet. So there is no simple chance. In order to retrieve, to take out the wallet, you need to go through what we call a multi-signature infrastructure. You need to have a decryption. You need to be able to. So depending on how you operate, and typically you will have maybe 5% of your total digital asset on hot wallet, and then you have 95% of it in cold wallet for safekeeping, for references. So depending on how you operate, then some, I know, fancy one become a warm wallet, somewhere in between there. Again, something to talk about. So that's kind of trying to explain in a layman, that's kind of hot and cold wallet.
Interesting. There's one question on cloud adoptions, right?
Yeah.
So how are you personally seeing it, especially for the incumbent player, right? Because there are certain countries or certain regulators take a stand of encouraging, right? Certain countries are still assessing, so for time being, they are discouraging the practice of cloud, right? Because it does involve some risk taking, right? So how are you personally seeing it?
We are quite a principle-based regulation. So I would say can't think of anybody who is not. So all the one that you see the list here are already on cloud. Many of them are on AWS, on Amazon. Some of them actually on Azure, but I think most of them are, even SC, as a SC, we were on Azure. On our home, all our home pages are on Azure, and then we have Google for Works, and then we have some other areas. So our principle is very simple. so long the information is about access, right? So the sovereignty doesn't come into exactly play, but obviously it's important factor. But what we care about is in the event we wanted, whether it's investigation, whether it's a protection, client protection or privacy, the individual principal needs to guarantee there's an access to the data itself, right? So what we care about was all the tradition, in addition to the traditional outsourcing guidelines that we have, whether the resiliency, the privacy, the confidentiality, how the data are managed. In addition to that, we impose, especially you're in the cloud, then we will need to have the access, and that access should be manifested by a commercial arrangement with either you're with AWS, with Ali Cloud, or your Google Cloud, or with any other cloud provider. Need to have that access to those information, and that's all of these need to be reflected as you apply to us.
I see. And whether the sovereignty, whether the server is hosted locally, is not top of a concern. Is that right?
We look at it. So if you do cloud, so for example, Amazon, then you multi-region. So Amazon will be Singapore and Sydney. So Australia. So or you can take so it must be a multi-region configuration. So we care a lot about how are you configured. So we can't say that Amazon is C2 certified. So I think CIA runs their whole infrastructure on Amazon.gov, right? But if you don't subscribe that services, if you don't configure it correctly, right? You look at 3-4 years back, Netflix or the whole Eastern Seaboard down, they use AWS, but doesn't mean AWS doesn't have duplicate infrastructure. It's just that the Netflix did not subscribe or configure it correctly. So what we care about is the access to data. How do you make sure your cloud configurations are correct or meet our regulatory requirement? These is something we care a lot about. So it's not like I have gone into Google Cloud, I'm okay, right? But we say, do you meet all our regulatory requirements with regards to resiliency, redundancy, confidentiality, privacy? Have a whole bunch of regulatory requirements.
Sure.
You can show that you can meet those, and I think, like I say, it's principle based.
Great, very good to see. I'm personally very pleased to hear this from very progressive regulators, right? The other questions is asking about the investor participation and take-up rate, right? I think leading from a poll result that we had early on, right? I think
you guys clearly not inside this particular in my chat here, not in the so in bizarre as it may seem, the digital asset exchanges have more than 400,000 investor index. I guess the group here not included in the 400,000.
Yeah. So in that sort of way, right? So we have an interesting question from Han Lian here, right? So there are people who are slow adopter, right, to a certain trend, right? Not everyone is into iPhone 12, right? So what
iPhone 12?
I'm sure you can. What does FC has, right, in terms of plan to further boost the take-up rate?
Yeah. Okay. So let me be clear. All these alternative asset classes is not for everybody, right? So you need to, just to be clear, right? You need to gauge your own risk appetite to say, is this money I can spare? And this is again, very typical investment product. Again, I would say these are categorized as a higher risk products, right? So you need to be aware what you're getting yourself into. So as you can see, our effort so far is about investor education. So we're not overly promoting. So the idea here is if you are not comfortable with this asset class, you should not invest in this particular asset class. And asset class, by that, I mean, if you look at whether it's crowdfunding for equity or debt with P2P financing, or even digital investment management, right? So you need to be comfortable for what you are and what your risk appetite is, right? So in that case, from a investor standpoint, you need to be clear if you're investing for the future or you are investing, there is a goal-based investing in the whole digital investment management space, right? We have spare change and all. So you got to be very clear what you are. What we have done in our regulation is a certain protection, right? Again, as with any high-risk investment product, right? So there's no, capital guarantee or anything like that, but you need to be clear what are the risks, right? So for retail, for equity crowdfunding, we're categorized into 3 groups if you read the guidelines. So the retail, the angel, as well as the sophisticated. Right? For retail, we have suggested that for each deal, they should not reinvest more than 5,000 ringgit per deal and up to 50,000 a year. Right? Obviously, if you declare yourself as angel investor, there's a certain limit, and then sophisticated obviously have no limits. Right? Likewise for peer-to-peer as well. So individual investors need to be cognizant of their own risk appetite. What we have done is we've done a lot of video. We have done this year is a 7th year we do SC by SC, which is our fintech conference. We will try to educate our broader public about the investor, right? But our goal is not to tell anybody to say this is best thing since sliced bread. So is this something that is consistent with what you want to invest, right? Whether it's putting money away for the for the retirement, whether you're looking at exposure so that you diversify your own portfolio, whether you're actually looking at certain company that you particularly like or certain sector you particularly like, or whatever your goals are, then you invest accordingly.
Okay, got it. Right. I think you kind of answered the upcoming questions as well. What's SE doing in raising the public awareness and education? Right. I think you touched on that. Wei Ming, I think there's one question. Not too sure it's in SE jurisdictions. It's about would SE looking into digitalizing insurance ecosystem when it comes to issue tag? I'm not too sure whether it's more bank negara, right?
Bank negara. So you're asking a tall order from me. No, I think I don't know. I think insurance. I do think that the bank negara has some very interesting insurtech that I've seen especially in the sandbox. So some of the aggregators, some of the one is pretty interesting. I think there's some progress there.
Right. Good. Tying back to, in a way, we always talk about, what I really like about the discussion to today, when we drive innovations, we are purpose-led, right? I think the four purposes I think you highlighted in the previous slide, I think it resonates very well. So from a Malaysia perspective, we don't adopt new thing for the sake of doing it, right? We don't adopt the latest tech because it just sounds cool, right? So in a way, it's very pleased to know that we do things because those mean a lot to Malaysia. Those have a good impact for Malaysia.
Yeah, like I said, I think we are fairly technology agnostic, but we do follow the trend and what the whole capability technology brings. Right? I would say that we don't innovate for innovation's sake, right? Just to kind of put it out there, and my team did a great job in terms of constantly scanning and updating our management. And an example would be like, since we are talking about the whole crypto space, like we have internally looked at, for example, is there a Bitcoin ETF? Is that the derivatives component? The latest chat in town will be DeFi, so decentralized finance. So we have looked at all these, and we have policy papers for internal deliberation. So these are the things we will continue to watch how the whole evolutions of the technology, but we're evaluating more in terms of does our market needs it? There is the need both from investors as well as issuers. How does that impact? How do we think about how the market wants it? Right. So I think that's kind of where we come from. I would be the first to say that SC, we are a regulator, so we're not. We definitely want to go. We don't do is to front run the market. Right? We don't dictate and decide for the markets what it needs or what it shouldn't need. We always look at fundamentally what is the needs for the the markets or the investor or the intermediary, so what they need, and then from then on we then we'll create what sort of right solution, then we consult the industry, and then we put forward if there is a regulatory help will definitely help. If some of the things we can decide that is actually a commercial driven decision, then they will let the market decide.
Great. Wei Min, can I ask you a personal questions?
Okay.
It may not represent the view of SE. It will not, right? I think more from my own perspective, right? If you have a crystal ball in front of you, how would you see a capital market in 2030, right? What are the mega trend that you think will shape and reshape, right? How would in short, how would capital market in 2030 be looking like in your own lens?
Okay. Again, personal views. I think I do think that the market continue. I mean, if you compare with the pre-AFC Asian financial crisis days to now, right? I think our market progressed a lot. I think we have institutionalized the whole fund management industry, and our market definitely have matured a lot. I know our bond market today is so significant, and I never thought we can pass this 1 billion mark so fast for our fintech space, right? And the way I see the whole COVID and pandemic situation have, in my view, accelerated the whole industry digitization easily by 2-3 years. I just kind of fast forward where it goes. So my view on capital market as a whole, I do see 5-10 years from now, we see us maturing, and then we see it more tiered, right? I think today we are gradually already moving there. I don't see us to be one size fits all, right? So there's no one single product. So for example, unit trust product only serve the whole mass public. I see us become more severe, so we become more tiered market. So no longer all things to all people, it will be something for some people. So I think with the whole flourishing for a lot of the information available today, right? Look at low research, right? So you can see people can be more self-directed, they can make more informed decisions. So again, contrast with that, we still see, like my mother's generation, that you definitely need a unit trust agent to serve them very well, right? Because they cannot see them to open up a stash away app to go and invest, right? So, and that's okay. I think we see our market to be more tiered. I see us, the whole different value chain will be more thinly spliced, so that because we can create value more strategically and more value add to the industry. So I do see become more smaller pieces that come together. Now, subsequently, I do see the whole, we will be creating more products if we can continue on to serve our market and think through what are the market needs, what the investor needs, how our intermediary will continue to evolve, right? Some of the work we're doing now, to some extent disintermediate, but to many extent we're also re-intermediating, right? We're creating the market space for different things, and part of the work I'm doing now is on CMP3, which is a Capital Market Master Plan 3. We're trying to take us through the next 5 years, and some of the new things we want to think about. How do we think about advice, right? How do we think about the what we call the whole frontier space? How do we do fundraise easier for the private companies? How do we help the micro and SMEs, right? How do we make be more relevant to the underlying economy today, which is why we have the objective of doing spare change. And how do we help the lower B40 generation, how do they access to capital market? So many of these things I see 5-10 years from now, we were able to make us more relevant and be able to serve the underlying economy better.
Yep, and it's a market for all, right?
Yeah.
Right, so bring whoever is underserved and outside the market into the market, right?
Yeah.
So good one. Wei Min, there's a questions on the DIM space, right? Digital Investment Management, right? Is SE looking to recruit more players into the market, given our neighbor Singapore has about 9 active peers covering at different tiers?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think it's making appeal to outside here. I mean, if you have a great idea, you should all, welcome to apply. I think we have 7 so far. I think there are a couple more in the pipeline. We have always looked at, and we have always trying to encourage the industry when I talk about, like, for example, spare change, right? So we, again, I mean, today the world is somewhat borderless, right? So if anybody who wants to, I could easily put money in Interactive Broker in Hong Kong. I can do Acons in the US, right? You can do eToro in UK, right? So that's and people who have access to that. So I will always ask the questions: how can it be relevant to Malaysian market? And we have seen time and again, right? StashAway have done great job. I think Rais have do, and even Wahid Invest today, just during the COVID period, they have able to amass 50 million ringgit or AUM in the space of during the whole MCO, right? So they were able to gain traction. And this is people put 100 ringgit, 200 ringgit in there. It's quite amazing how they have done it, right? So it's about the value proposition to our people, the investor. Again, then how do they put the products out there? I will be the first to admit that I think we probably need to introduce more products that will allow our retail investor to invest, and we need to make it ticket size smaller, right? I think today if we say talk about unit trust, right, the entry point barrier is quite low, right? If you look at P2P, our average size is about 400 ringgit, right? So we are enabling some part of that. And I encourage everybody, part of our goal for the digital investment management is to bring the whole industry along with us, right? That's why I think some of the people whom approve, like UOB Kay Hian and all the others, we're trying to get our financial banking group to embrace the whole journey to this, right? So this is the part of doing our part to make sure not just the innovative entrepreneur, but we also want our incumbent players to come on the industry digitization journey.
Interesting. I think we kind of come to the last part of the forum of the webinar, right? Looking at the crowd today, especially for CFA members and candidates, right? In Malaysia, broadly speaking, I think we are in the young stage of the mid-level tier, right? In terms of the organizations. And just to share a bit more, I think we are an organization, a society with I think a lot of members are fund manager, investment bankers working for financial services industry, right? So if you could speak to yourself 20 years ago, I think, and addressing this a group of ambitious, financial specialist professional, what sort of advice you give? What sort of career advice you would give it to them, so that this group here can be better prepared for the upcoming changes?
Well, I wish I could be younger. I mean, you guys, this is the best time. I mean, I remember when I started work in the early 90s, right? I think the industry doesn't, the unit trust is just at the beginning. We don't have that many products. We don't have that opportunity. And well, I think this is one of the a good time to be young with 5-10 years experience. The industry right now is in an inflection point to change. I think the whole digitization journey is changing. The world is changing. I think the way we fundraise are different. The way we invest are different. No better opportunity than now to look at, how we're going to do that. I think I would encourage you to break free from your current mindsets about how finance are conducted. I think, I quote many years ago, people were saying that, banks may not exist 50 years from now, but the banking will exist, right? So the activity itself will continue to evolve and change, right? So that's something we need to consciously look at. I mean, not too long ago, people cannot imagine how can you crowdfund and finance, provide access to financing to SME by having the, so this is where I talk about re-intermediation. There are many interesting ideas out there. I think it's just up to you to seize the opportunity to be there. I do think the whole value chain, as I mentioned just now, I think about how our market will continue to mature and become multi-tiered, right? Each part of the value chain will require new value creation. And many of you who in the right place doing the right thing, and that's something you can be be creative and all. I think ID from the whole CEO of RISE, which is a joint venture between PNB and RISE, which is again taking on from Econs, right? He came from a fund management side from PNB, who take the bold step, venture this idea to his BNB bosses, and today he's the new startup that is backed by PNB, right? So that's a great story that I would say, can totally emulate, and a lot of people should do something like this.
Interesting. In fact, today, just today, I spoke to a new investment bank in Hong Kong who has just gotten license and launched Bank and Proper, right? I think just to share, because I think it's quite relevant to a topic for today, right? They are looking to onboard client, right? So the digital onboarding there, right? I think their value prop is that if they cannot onboard you within 15 minutes, every single minutes they will pay you about 10 Hong Kong dollar, right? So every single 1 minute of delay, every 1 minute or 10 minutes of delay, they will compensate you in terms of some reward, right? And I kind of ask them, right, how do you get this idea from, right? And the owner, the founder, very proud to and share with me that he actually copied the idea from restaurant, right? So think about it. If you're a restaurant and if you're late to be served, people will serve you snacks. I mean, you go to Hai Di Lao and whatever, right? People will give you certain form of compensations to calm you down, right? So I think precisely resonate very well with Wei Min here, right? So I think the processes, the banking needs, the financial services need will not change, right? But it's the experience and the needs that we are providing. I think we are hoping that we can better fulfill the investor and customer here.
I hope that answer whatever questions that you have on the
Certainly,
I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a CFA, so you guys already went up on me.
Our intake is still open, Wei Min, for next year, right? We're happy to enroll you, to recruit you, right? So
Getting
I think,
too
guys,
old to go and study.
Yeah, never too old. You just asked us to embrace growth mindset, right? Wei Min?
Yeah, but I say I wish I'm younger, like you guys.
All right, so guys, I think we come to the end of the forum, right? I think personally learned a lot in terms of the different digital trend that SC has promoted, right? I think you have looked at the different licenses, the classes of license has in a way has gone up. I think what I personally like about today's topic, I think bear in mind the moment we do change, the moment we run transformation, innovation, digitalizations, is always purpose-led, right? So to call out the 4 key purposes from Wei Min slide number 1 is really to enhance access to financing, right? To make sure we include the underserved market today, right? The second one is really augment the current institutional market. The third one is to increase investor participations. So through today's forum, I'm hoping that you guys get to know some of these digital product a little bit more, right? So Wei Min, I'm helping you to recruit them as part of the new channel as well. The fourth one is really about the synergistic ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the digital brokerage, digital assets custodian, etc. Right? So, and thanks again, Wei Min. I think this is our first webinar with CFA Society Malaysia. I certainly enjoy the discussion today. Hope is is likewise, right? From your side.
Thank you for inviting me for this session.
All right. So we certainly will keep in touch in future events and all. And when we come across digital innovations, we are more than happy to have you back to share with you, right, some of the chapter of success and the progress that Security Commissions has made.
Yeah.
In the future. All right. Thanks a lot, Wei Min, and good evening, everyone. Right. Continue to take care and stay well.
Yep. Stay safe. Thanks. Bye now.